All right, everybody, welcome aboard to the overview disc training. Sierra is our instructor today, and she's the founder of Sierra Learnership Collaborative, where she is a leadership development coach and speaker. She was born in Winchester, Virginia, up there in the mountains, and grew up just 30 minutes west in a town of less than 300, Yellow Spring, West Virginia. Sierra identifies her greatest core value as growth, which led to the creation of her business and her use of the term learnership. You got that, guys? Learnership, not leadership. I think that's so adorable. To describe the need for both lifelong learning and the development of effective leadership skills to achieve one's potential. She's looking forward to sharing strategies that can change the way you communicate with colleagues, clients, referral partners, family, and everyone you meet. Effective communication is key, and she is going to give you a glimpse into what can be achieved through effective communication today. Welcome aboard, Sierra.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. So first of all, if you have been with me before for an overview, I did change today's presentation. So there's definitely new things in here. So I do recognize a couple names. I think Pat Worth has been here before, maybe Sherry Young. I'd love when you can have the camera on so that I can see your faces and interact with you. So if you're in a space where you can do that, please do so. Thank you, ladies that have theirs on right now. This is super helpful. So as Cindy said, I am a leadership development coach, speaker, and trainer. I love to spend time working with DISC, which helps us to identify personality styles and communication styles so that we can improve our communication. And when you think about it, we're communicating all the time. We are sending messages, whether it's with body language, whether we're speaking, texting, calling someone, we're in person, whatever it may be, we are communicating all the time. And when you think about the purpose of communication, it's to send a message, right? And if we're not sending the message in a way that the person can receive it and understand it and apply it, then we're not sending it the right way. So an example of this is prior to what I'm doing now, I was a teacher for 10 years. I could not walk into the classroom and say, I'm going to teach you the way that I learn best. That's not the way that they learn, right? So I had to learn to adapt my instruction to the needs of the learners in the room. So then they could understand the content. And this is the same thing we should be doing in all of our conversations. So every time we meet someone new, we should be reading the situation. We should be, applying our social awareness skills and social regulation to be able to figure out how to best communicate with them. So that's what we're talking about here today. Let me get this going for you. So today we're going to talk about discovering patterns in behavior. And once we discover these patterns, which all the work has been done for us, we just need to understand how to use them. And then we're going to talk about the personal and professional applications for this DISC method that we are talking about. So those of you that have been with me before on this next piece, it's a quick numbers exercise and it seems really weird and like it doesn't make sense why we would be doing this. Well, you can do it again if you've done it before, because I do it every time that my participants do it, and it's still just as enjoyable and I do better each time. So here we go. When you look at this screen, you see a random mix of numbers. Okay. And when I say go, and that means not now, but when I say go, so don't cheat, look at me, don't look at that. I want you to start at the number 1, and in order, we're going to count up. We're going to look for 1. Once we find 1, we're looking for 2, and so on. And when the timer is up, you're going to identify the highest number that you got to in consecutive order. Don't skip any numbers. Okay. What questions do we have about that? Okay, so no questions. You guys have to be interactive with me. I like talking to you. This is participation, so don't make me talk at you the whole time. That's not my style. So you can unmute yourself, you can participate. So I'm setting the timer. You guys are going to have 1 minute, and you may start at 1, go.
1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9.
We're halfway there. Thanks, Sherry. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and stop. Anastasia, what'd you get to?
12.
Awesome. Lady with the hat, is it Brenda or did I make that up?
Barbara, 22.
I knew it started with a B. 22, thank you.
22. Oh, put them in the thing, put them in there. Okay.
That works. Pat got to 21. Okay, anybody else want to submit or unmute yourself and share what you got to? Awesome. All right, perfect. So if anybody noticed at the very top and bottom, left and right, there are these little tick marks in the center. Okay, and I'm going to show you that it really turns it into 4 quadrants. And you will discover that 1 is the upper left quadrant, 2 is the upper right, 3 is the lower right, 4 is the lower left. So where might 5 be?
And the left upper.
Yeah, exactly, right? So it's going to continue. So we are going to do the same activity. Given that piece of information, you're going to have 1 minute. You're going to start again at 1, and we're going to see how high we can get in 1 minute. Are we ready?
Mhm.
And I will leave that there for you. You may begin. $20 seconds remaining. And stop. Anastasia, what'd you get to?
35.
What was it?
35.
Wow. Okay. Barbara. Oh, we have at 36. All right, so I'm seeing some big changes here. So who can come off mute and tell me why there was such a difference in our performance the first time and the second time?
Because it was organized. I mean,
Okay.
I
It was
wasn't-
organized in a way that makes sense to us. Yeah. What else?
I wasn't all over the place. I could go from one section to the next, look for the next. Then look for
Yeah. Yeah. Because you discovered what? What did you discover about it?
a system.
Yeah. When we discover a system, when we discover a pattern is in place, it's so much easier. We are so much more effective in what we do. So here is an example. We have patterns here. We look at patterns. We're discovering patterns in behavior. Okay. So once you knew the pattern, you are much, much faster at completing it and you'll get better each time. So these patterns in behavior have been studied for many, many years. It all started with Empedocles and Hippocrates, some names you might recall. Empedocles and Hippocrates, actually, this whole idea of discs did start with 4 different personality styles. It's always been 4 throughout history, but back then it was about internal body fluids. It was about, elements in the earth. There were all different systems and things that they were noticing that they thought impacted people's behavior, whether it was fluids or matter. Then we had Myers-Briggs, okay? Myers-Briggs testing. You might have done a Myers-Briggs test before. Carl Jung came up with the idea of thinking, feeling, sensing, and intuition as the 4 indicators of personality. Okay, so if you've taken a Myers-Briggs test before, you end up getting like INFJ, right? So each of these letters represent something. Well, it was the same idea with DISC. William Marston came up with the theory of DISC, and the D stands for dominance, I for influence, S for steadiness, and C for compliance. Often we hear people say, I'm a D or I'm a C, right? We want to get away from that thinking. It's not about being a certain letter. For each of these, when you take a DISC assessment, you have a score or a value on each of these scales. So the dominant scale has to do with how you handle problems and challenges. So if you have a high D, that means you are very dominant and you approach it head on and you jump right in and make a decision. But if you have a low D, that means you're more reserved, you hold back and you don't jump and make a decision right away. Okay, so if each one of these, we have basically a continuum. You can think of it vertically or horizontally, a continuum, and you fall somewhere on the continuum. So even though when we get DISC assessment results, we often are identified 1, 2, or 3 letters that represent us, we all have all of these different aspects in our personality style and are able to use them in different situations and adapt to that situation. So I might, if I'm in a really stressful situation, my D might go up because I will need to be more dominant personality, take charge and help solve the problem more quickly, right? So it can change based on who you're around, what setting you're in. When I was a teacher, who I was walking into the school versus who I was with my family and friends, very different, right? So you're able to use these different characteristics at different times. So this isn't new. It's been around for a very, very long time. All the science has been done for you. They have all of this down. So the only work you have to do is learn to identify these styles in the people around you and learn how it affects the way you communicate with them.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
You mentioned in the first part about the fluids.
Yes. Internal fluids.
So could you be a little clear on that? So how you're
internal fluids. So basically he spoke of, have you heard of sanguine, choleric, melancholy, and what's the fourth one? I'm blanking right now. Sanguine, choleric, melancholy. There's a fourth one. And basically he said that these were fluids that were inside individuals, whether it be true or not, that shaped their personality. So what I'm showing you here is now what we know shapes our personality is heredity, the role models in our life, how we're raised, the environment we're raised in, all of these things shape our personality. Well, his original idea was that we were born with these fluids inside of us that changed our personality. And in the idea of sharing that, good question, Barbara, is that it's relevant in the sense that even back then in 400 BC, they were already identifying it was 4 all the way through. It was 4 fluids. It was 4 elements of the earth. It's 4 for Myers-Briggs. It was the, sensing, feeling, intuition. Everything is 4. So when we finally arrived at this DISC theory, it all made sense looking back at the patterns over the years, that there are 4 distinct personality styles. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And my question in relation to that, because with the fluids, I know we have blood, and I know we have excretion, and then I know we have sweat.
Right.
So, I just wondered
how those connect, right?
Yes.
So that's a really good point. I'd be happy to send you research on it after our call today. I'll grab your contact information and send you more details on that.
Oh, absolutely. I'm very much interested. Thank you. I've actually studied with Deepak for a minute.
Oh, good. Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So we are going to talk today about these 4 styles at a very high level. The idea is this is introduction, this is an overview, and then the individual sessions we break down D, I, S, and C. So I've already had our D breakdown. It has been recorded. It should be online. I'm sure Cindy can help you find that. And so, each month I'm doing a breakdown of a different area. The idea is to not put us in boxes and close the lid and categorize us, but it's to help us identify the way we communicate with others, the way we solve problems, the way we make decisions, and how we feel about being in a group of people versus working alone. So it just changes the environment that you want to work in and you succeed in. It changes everything about the way you work and live. So today is different. So I know, Sherry, you mentioned you've watched before. Please pay attention to this because I've added some other stuff in today to make today unique. So if you've been here in the past, you do get something new out of this. So today we're going to watch a video of a meeting. And in this meeting, there are 4 individuals, okay? One of them represents a D, one an I, one an S, one a C, okay? We're going to get to watch all of them in action to start. Just watch the meeting, right? And then we're going to identify who the D was, talk about their style, and then we're going to watch a recap of the video, but from their perspective. So we're going to get to see through the lens of each of these 4 personalities and why they reacted the way they did in the meeting. This is very helpful in identifying even those around us in our family and why they react the way they do to certain situations and what their true intentions are. So I am going to go ahead and share this video. Let me share the sound for you. Those of you that have cameras on, if you can hear, give me a thumbs up.
That's a great notebook, Susan. I saw one like it a week ago at the paper outlet. I almost bought it too, but I got distracted because I ran into an old friend.
All right, everyone, let's get started. As you know by now, we are in charge of planning our participation in the annual industry trade show. This year's theme is Exceeding the Vision. Make sure to keep this in mind as we plan.
You know, that's a great theme. It makes me think about how we tend to put boundaries on ourselves when setting goals. I think we should start to look past our mental and perceived constraints and how we need to break down barriers to achieve more than we ever thought possible. You know what I always say? We can achieve more than we think we can, especially with this stellar team.
Right. I have started a list with the 4 main tasks we need to complete. We have 3 months, people. I will take product support, and I've assigned 1 for each of you. Calvin, I have you on contact collection and creating a process to follow up with our generated leads.
Okay. Well, last year we had a 20% open rate on our follow-up email. But I wanted to outline a way to increase that by 30%. But then I was reading this year's rules for the trade show, and it mentioned that we will not be allowed to collect the necessary information on attendees that I would need to implement my plan.
So what are you thinking?
Well, based on last year's data, we need to focus in on our ideal customer and cast a smaller net. That way we can execute a better follow-up. And if we do so, it should result in a 10 to 15% increase in open rates and at least a 25% increase in ultimate sales.
Good. Good, Calvin. Moving on, Susan, I have you on booth theme again this year. I'd like to try something completely new to draw a larger crowd. What are your initial thoughts?
I thought the theme worked really well last year. Are you sure we need to change everything completely? I mean, we know how to work with these older materials and we know the pieces fit in the space that we have.
With the theme this year, the change is warranted. We can do better.
I'm sorry you didn't like my ideas last year. Maybe I could have some time to think about it. Did you have something in mind?
Last year's was fine, and I know you can come up with another great theme. I just want you to decide before the next meeting because it impacts the rest of the group. Isaac.
Yes.
I have you on messaging. How do we want to communicate our new focus this year? Meaning 1 or 2 things that we each need to make sure we mention.
Those are great questions. You know, I like to think about our trade show theme and how we can tie that to our company's focus. I think it would really resonate with people if we told a personalized story. I remember talking to a gentleman a year ago about how his wife had bought our products and how she raved about them for months. He said it seemed to be life-changing. Doesn't that just get you? Life-changing. Man, that story stuck with me. I think if we all told a personal story about how the new focus has made an impact on our lives, that would make some waves.
But remember, according to the book Sales Tactics for Salespeople, we only have 30 seconds to make a positive impact on an attendee.
Yes, we just need to focus on those 1 or 2 points. Yes.
I like the story idea. We don't want to rush people through.
And right, this is our time to really connect to potential customers. How often do we get an opportunity to share in this way, especially when talking to clients face to face?
All right. I've got to run to my next meeting. Does everyone understand what is required for our next meeting?
Yes.
Sure do.
Good. I will send out a bulleted list to confirm.
Hey, does anyone want to grab lunch later after this? I ran into this great ramen place last week, and oh my God, the ramen's unbelievable. Hole in the wall, but guess what? It's got cockroaches and everything. It makes it authentic. Guys, hello? Hey.
All right, so I'm gonna stop share real quick. I wanna see you guys. So what did you notice about these 4 people and their personalities? Any observations about the 4 individuals and how they were different? Anybody can come off mute and share with me.
Well, okay, I'll start.
Okay,
Let's see, I'll start with the black gentleman.
Isaac, yeah.
Isaac, who seemed to be pretty well based around it in reference to outgoing, wanting to share, pretty creative with his ideas. The ideas were community, connecting and collaborating and making it all for one. I found the other gentleman, I didn't remember his name, to be pretty much to the book. This is how, and very much efficient in what he did with his numbers and how he rounded them out and so forth. So he's a good mate, but he didn't have the other outgoing personality to be actually into the sales position. The young lady, a little unsure of herself, a little touchy feely, and with her, but she was flexible, because then she went back and she joined back in with Isaac in reference to, okay, well, that sounds good. I like the idea of us actually giving, because the testimonies is what sells, who you are and what people want to know, a little bit more, that you care and that they can relate to you before moving into that. I found the lady who was in charge to be pretty much position, a leader by position, not really hearing what was going on, what was on the last year, going by statistics and what she had in reference to where we were, want to move forward. I didn't really bring any of her own ideas. Her ideas were like kind of stoic in a percentage, but she, so she, in her position, she gave them what she wanted them to do and didn't even stay around. She didn't even build relationships with them. So
She didn't. Great observations. That is perfect. Anybody like to add anything that resonated with them from the video? Nobody. You're not gonna make me pick on you. All right, let's see. Diana, would you mind sharing now? Is it Deanna or Diana? I don't know if she can hear me. It's okay. All right, so with the 4 individuals, just as Barbara was saying, they each had very distinct personalities. Now remember, we don't necessarily fall into one box, so it might not be as prominent in individuals around us as it is with them. Obviously, this is dramatized and this has been created specifically to show off these 4 styles. But we're going to break down each of these now. And it's interesting because I went through this process, I don't even know, probably 15 times before I realized that each of their first names start with the letter of the personality style they represent. Like Calvin is a C, Isaac is an I, Susan is an S, and so on. And I didn't even realize that for the longest time, but now it makes total sense to me. And I do want to share, Barbara, I did look into the internal fluids while you guys were watching the video. So it's sanguine, choleric, melancholy, and phlegmatic, which correspond with black bile, yellow bile, phlegm, and blood. But I will send information on that to you because there's some awesome charts and stuff out there about how those interact and what it really means.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Happy to help. All right, so let me share my screen with you again so we can get this up and going. And we are going to start by talking about our D personality. So this is the one that Barbara saw as that person that was coming in and was the boss not necessarily an effective leader in the way that she was presented in this setting, but she was the boss. She came in, she knew what she wanted, and she wanted to get there quickly, right? She didn't want to take a ton of time, didn't want to build the relationships as she was just saying, she just saw a task and wanted it completed. So let me go ahead and share again with you guys. Screen 1 and from current slide. All right, so this is the D, okay? Ds are very task oriented. So our Ds usually have a vision. They don't necessarily know how they want to get there, but they see the end and that's where they want to be as quickly as possible, right? Our Ds love control, all right? They seek control in a situation. They seek that leadership position. So if you are put into a group of people and someone automatically jumps out front and is like, I'll take the lead of this, you do this, you do this, you do this, chances are they probably have a high D personality. It's higher on the scale as opposed to being someone who sees a problem or a challenge and holds back to wait for others to start coming up with ideas. So these individuals are also great with direct confrontation. They're not afraid to take it head on. They go with the flow and they're not afraid to say what they think. Their greatest fear is actually being taken advantage of. And I can share a personal connection to this. So my personality style is actually CD. So D is my secondary. And all throughout school, I was the one who was ready to take the lead and take charge on things because in my mind, if I did it, it would be done right. Okay, so I know some people have that personality and it's like, well, if I do it and it's wrong, there's no one to blame but myself. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. Well, it ends up that even when we don't want to do things, people start taking advantage of that. So they're like, oh, Sierra will just do it and she'll do a fabulous job. There's no need to help her with that, right? And so people start taking advantage of Ds and their personality of taking the lead role on something. So look at all these wonderful strengths that a D has. So if you are not a high D, maybe you're an S, and we'll talk about what that means. If you are a more reserved personality, it can be very intimidating to be around a very strong D. I have met some pure Ds in my life. They'll take the assessment and it literally, all it shows is primary D off the charts. That can be very overwhelming to a person who is more reserved. Okay, but these are great strengths that any D brings to a team. We want someone who is goal oriented and has a vision and can see what we're working towards. We want someone who's able to take the lead in an emergency situation and do it and be calm, cool, and collected, right? We want someone who is comfortable leading, and we're not going to all sit and stare at one another and wait for someone to start, right? So these are all great strengths. So every single one of these personality styles is necessary, is needed, and should be represented on a team. But with those strengths come obstacles, okay? The obstacles are often when a D is under great stress or tension. Or this can also be a list of things that or words that would be used to describe how someone else perceives a D. So as I mentioned before, if I'm more reserved and I'm an S and I sit back and I want everyone's opinion, I want to make sure everyone's in favor of the decisions that we make, I can be very overwhelmed by that. And I could think that a D is being super insensitive. They don't care how anyone feels. They're just going to do it their way no matter what. Or they seem impatient because we're not moving fast enough for them and they just want it done and they want it done now, right? So all of those strengths get multiplied and can be overused when in stress or under pressure. So then they become obstacles for a D. So we have to acknowledge Ds have obstacles too, right? So when you're thinking about how maybe someone in a meeting you've seen kind of take charge, maybe it drives you crazy and you're like, why do they feel like they get to take the lead on this? They act like they know it all, right? We have to think about how they're wired and what's natural for them. So let's watch that same meeting from the D perspective.
All right, everyone, let's get started. I like to keep meetings concise and focused to 3 or 4 main objectives. I value my time and the time of others, so I make a point to start on schedule.
You know, that's a great theme. It makes me think about how we tend to put boundaries on ourselves when setting goals. I think we should start to look past our mental and perceived constraints.
Every time. Isaac is extremely bright and always shares good ideas, but sometimes I wish he would stick to talking about the objectives. Right, I have started a list with the 4 main tasks we need to complete. We have 3 months, people. Bulleted lists are my main preferred method of note-taking, email writing, and question answering. It is the most direct and to the point means of written communication. Clear, concise, and quick.
Well, last year we had a 20% open rate on our follow-up email. But I wanted to outline a way to increase that by 30%. But then I was reading this year's rules for the trade show, and it mentioned that we will not be allowed to collect the necessary information on attendees that I would need to implement my plan.
Just tell me how you're going to fix it. So what are you thinking?
Well, based on last year's data, we need to focus in on our ideal customer and cast a smaller net. That way we can execute a better follow-up. And if we do so, it should result in a 10 to 15% increase in open rates and at least a 25% increase in ultimate sales.
Perfect. Good, Calvin. Moving on, Susan, I have you on booth theme again this year. I'd like to try something completely new to draw a larger crowd. What are your initial thoughts? I want to win. Can you win a trade show? Either way, we're winning.
I thought the theme worked really well last year. Are you sure we need to change everything completely?
Sometimes I feel like Susan is following a different clock than the rest of us. I just wish her clock would turn a little faster. With the theme this year, the changes warranted, we can do better.
I'm sorry you didn't like my ideas last year.
Here we go. I know I often come across as a little aggressive. It's not personal, especially in the workplace. Me challenging your idea isn't me challenging you as a human being or your personality. But I know that not everyone is wired like me. Last year's was fine, and I know you can come up with another great theme. I just want you to decide before the next meeting because it impacts the rest of the group. Isaac.
Yes.
I have you on messaging. How do we want to communicate our new focus this year? Meaning 1 or 2 things that we each need to make sure we mention.
Those are great questions. You know, I like to think about our trade show theme and how we can tie that to our company's focus. I think it would really resonate with people if we told a personalized story. I remember talking to a gentleman a year ago about how his wife had bought our products and how she raved about them for months.
But remember, according to the book Sales Tactics for Salespeople, we only have 30 seconds to make a positive impact on an attendee.
Yes, we just need to focus on those 1 or 2 points. Yes.
I like the story idea. We don't want to rush people through.
Let's focus.
This is our time to really connect to potential customers. How often did we get an opportunity to share in this way, especially when talking to clients face to face?
Not happening. All right. I've got to run to my next meeting. Does everyone understand what is required for our next meeting?
Yes.
Sure do.
Good. I will send out a bulleted list to confirm. Overall, it was a productive meeting, but sometimes I just don't feel like people have the same urgency or competitive spirit that I bring to the table. I don't necessarily like the routine of meetings, and I like to encourage my team to share new ideas, but I like those ideas to be on topic with the meeting objectives, especially on a busy day. I may come across as angry or aggressive, but that is often misunderstood. I just thrive in a faster paced atmosphere that's focused on results.
Hey, does anyone want to grab lunch later after this? I ran a
All right, so looking at that, before we reflect on the I, I'm going to pull back out again. So now that we've seen the meeting from Dee's perspective, how many of you can relate to Dee at all? Is there any kind of, okay, so you can a little bit, Barbara. What aspect of the Dee's personality do you connect with? Oh, you were unmuted. There you go.
Okay, yeah, I can see her approach is that she wanted the topic to have the objective, but she also wanted it to have the solution.
Mhm.
Whether it came across or not, maybe the way that she needed to have shared that, it might have been a little tight and tight that she didn't bring that out. But her mode and method was not wrong. It was just, I could say the delivery of it might have been a little bit on the stern side.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other connections to her personality? Feel free to drop it in the chat too if you are not wanting to unmute yourself. All right, so looking at the D personality, we can understand connecting with the slides that we just learned. She's very task oriented, results oriented. She wants to get there quickly. She has great intentions. She really does have great intentions, but people don't often see it that way. It comes across as aggressive at times because she's overusing it. So we have to be aware of that. Those people are around us all the time. So we have to think about what they need and what they want. And that's why we have these other breakout sessions where I'm focusing in on a D, focusing in on an I, and so on, because we really need to dig deep and understand, how do we identify these people? What do they need? What are they desiring that we can fulfill that need when we communicate with them? And how can we retrain our brains as well to keep in mind, you know, their perspective? Barbara?
Yeah, she appeared to be very opinionated, and that needs a lot of personal growth and development, because you got to hear your people too, and she needed to know them a little bit better herself in order for her to actually to be in that managerial position, which was so important, that she was shutting down ideas that was good, but she glossed over them because of her own objectives, and so she didn't bring the solution herself to be able to resolve what was given to her, to turn it around so it was useful.
Exactly.
It was just, it was a clear and concise.
Mhm.
Think of something else.
Which might work for some, but can be really hard for others to deal with if you're not used to that, right? All right, so Elizabeth, the Ds are so focused on the results. Yes, they are. And it's great. We need someone who's focused on results, but they rely on the I, S, and C to get them there. And so they have to see the value and the strengths that they bring. So let's talk about that now. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again with you guys. Here we go. And we have the I. The I is the friendly one, okay? So they seek relationships with everyone they meet. They talk to you in the elevator. They tell great stories. They're the life of the party, center of attention, and they don't care that it's that way. They love it. What's important to them is that they don't lose the relationship with you. They want your approval. They're afraid of being rejected. So they will do what it takes to make sure that they're on your good side, that they are pleasing you, right? So great relationship builders, great energy. They bring a lot of energy into every room. Strengths. Our eyes are great salespeople because they're so persuasive. They're so charismatic with anybody that they talk to. They can win anybody over. It's pretty easy for them. Unless you're a D personality and you want someone to get straight to the point, and you have an I like Isaac who wants to go into stories and wants to talk, and it doesn't align with what you already have in mind. So this is where we start to have conflict and miscommunication, when we have these different personality styles that clash a little bit, because where an I has a great strength, the D is a little resistant to that. They don't want you to do all the talking because they like to be in control. They like to make the decisions, right? So very fun, happy, optimistic. That's why this is in bright yellow. There are bright, sunshiny people. Well, because they're so bright and shiny and love building relationships and talking a lot, sometimes they can be easily distracted. So they could be a little disorganized. Maybe they don't always follow through on a task that's asked of them in a timely manner because they get distracted along the way. and they overcommit because they want to make everybody happy. So they say, yeah, I'll help with that. Yeah, I'll help with that, until they have way too much on their plate and they can't follow through on everything. So then they kind of lose people's trust in following through on necessary tasks. So here is a video from Isaac's perspective. Very interesting.
That's a great notebook, Susan. I saw one like it a week ago at the paper outlet. I almost bought it too, but I got distracted because I ran into an old friend.
All right, everyone, let's get started.
D has always seemed a little impersonal. I enjoy any opportunity I get to connect with my coworkers on a personal level. That connection helps us work better as a team, and we look out for one another because of it.
This year's theme is exceeding the vision. Make sure to keep this in mind as we plan.
You know, that's a great theme. I mean, come on. Who doesn't love a good theme? I do. This one made me think about a conversation I was having with a client about overcoming adversity. Jerry was talking about how his business had a little setback when he had lost a big account to a competitor. We started talking about Rebecca, one of his lead salespeople, and how she seemed a little distracted lately. I don't know, maybe it was the bad weather they were having in New England at the time. They get a ton of snow. Anyway, Gary and Shirley, his wife, were talking about how they had a simple conversation with Rebecca, asking her if there any support that she needed. Just from that connection, her sales doubled. You hear? Doubled. Talk about exceeding the vision.
Calvin, I have you on contact collection and creating a process to follow up with our generated leads.
Okay. Well, last year we had a 20% open rate on our follow-up email. But I wanted to outline a way to increase that by 30%.
Numbers, 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 numbers.
So what are you thinking?
Well, based on last year's data, we need to focus in on our ideal customer and cast a smaller net. That way we can execute a better follow-up. And if we do so, it should result in a 10 to 15% increase in open rates and at least a 25% increase in ultimate sale.
Numbers. How does he remember them all?
Moving on, Susan, I have you on booth theme again this year. I'd like to try something completely new to draw a larger crowd. What are your initial thoughts?
I thought the theme worked really well last year. Are you sure we need to change everything completely?
Poor Susan.
With the theme this year, the change is warranted. We can do better.
I'm sorry you didn't like my ideas last year.
Last year's was fine, and I know you can come up with another great theme.
There she is. I knew Dee had it in her to sympathize with us. She's a great leader and a really nice person. She has a dog named Cooper. Cutest dog you've ever seen.
How do we want to communicate our new focus this year? Meaning one or two things that we each need to make sure we mention.
Those are great questions. My turn again? All right. I really like to add color to my suggestions through stories and related interactions I've had in the past. Even if the story isn't exactly on point, the feeling is still there.
But remember, according to the book Sales Tactics for Salespeople, we only have 30 seconds to make a positive impact on an attendee.
Okay, numbers. I'll capture that in 30 seconds. But who wouldn't want to stay and chat with me for a while? And right, this is our time to really connect to potential customers. How often did we get an opportunity to share in this way, especially when talking to clients face to face?
All right. I've got to run to my next meeting.
I can't believe our meeting's over already. I had so many ideas I wanted to share. Maybe I'll talk to Dee about extending the meeting next time. Hey, does anyone want to grab lunch later after this? I ran into this great ramen place last week, and oh my God, the ramen's unbelievable. Seriously, best ramen ever. You guys want to go? I'm buying.
All right, guys, I laughed at that specifically because it is so painful for me. So with my CD personality, I'm like super task oriented, right? And I want to get there and I want to get there quickly, but I want it done right. That's the C side of me. I'm very analytical. And so I can have great conversation, but I want it like the grounding activity at the beginning of the meeting, right? And then get that off the table. And then all the side stuff, I don't want it. It just gets in the way for me. So Anyway, every time I watch it, I'm like, Isaac, please just stop. But it's different for everyone, because if you're an I personality, that was like, oh, that's so me. That's what I do in meetings. I just want to chat. So it's very interesting. So what did we notice about I? Carmen?
Also, even though I don't have a camera, so he's so very worried about connections and relationship and how to sympathize with others, and how that brings into the business as well. But that's like his foundation is that.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Carmen. So if you have taken a DISC assessment in the past, I will tell you, it's not always going to be the same. So if you've had any major event in your life, whatever that may be, if it's a loss in your life, or maybe a total shift in your career, whatever that might look like, your levels in each of these can change. Well, as a business owner, I've had to change my I. Okay, I've had to put forth more effort in building the relationship and taking the time to get to know people. And I respect that, and I love that portion, but I know when to stop in my mind, and I know when to move into, okay, let's get focused. What's the objective? What are we working on here, right? So I think it's important to acknowledge the relationship piece is important, and that's why we love our eyes, because they take the time to build a relationship. It's not a one and done kind of client deal. It's, I want you to be a client for life. I want to build a relationship with you. It's not transactional. So I'm sure when thinking of being a realtor and dealing with I personalities, they want you to be a realtor for life. They want you to be a part of every move in their future. They don't want it to just be this time, right? Thank you so much, Carmen, for sharing. All right, we have to move quickly into the next one. We're going to talk about the S. So here we go again. All right, our S personality. That is our Susan. She is definitely more reserved. She likes the team environment. She wants to talk things out. Our S's care a lot about taking the time to understand others' feelings. So she likes Isaac. She wants to hear his opinion, and that's why she loved the relationship aspect, because she loves people too, and she loves pleasing people. She does not like conflict. Anytime that there is conflict, an S can pull back from the situation and shut down. Our S's are the ones that dislike conflict the most and will often do anything to avoid it, even if it means giving up what they want and doing what everyone else wants because they want to avoid the conflict. Great listeners, the person that you can trust to follow through on anything and get it done, but does it a little slower because they want to talk to everyone about it first and make sure it's the right decision. What do they fear? Confrontation, conflict, not pleasing people. Okay. Strengths, look at all these amazing strengths. Something I want to point out is that these individuals are going to be the ones that are supportive. Okay, so they're the ones that no matter what the decision is, they will find a way to get behind you and support you in it, even if it wasn't their idea in the beginning, or even if they didn't agree with it in the beginning. Very, very loyal individuals. But others can see them as being indecisive because they take so long to make a decision, because they care so much about what everyone else thinks. Why are they so indecisive? Why can't they just make a decision? Everything seems to take a little bit longer for an S. That's why the D said about Susan, she just doesn't, she wishes her clock worked a little faster, because the speed at which an S and in a moment a C works is much too slow for a D personality. And then in general, just needing reassurance, making sure that you're happy with what they're doing. That's why she was like, you didn't like what I did last year, right? Because in her mind, she did the best with what she could. And by just saying that one statement, she took it to mean she didn't do a great job. All right, here we go. Let's listen to it from the S.
All right, everyone, let's get started. As you know by now, we are in charge of planning our participation in the annual industry trade show.
I don't remember being told about this. I mean, we participated last year, so I guess it was understood. This is not my ideal situation.
You know, that's a great theme. It makes me think about how we tend to put boundaries on ourselves when setting goals. I think we should start to look past our mental and perceived constraints.
Isaac is a great guy. He always makes me feel welcome. Sometimes, though, it's hard to get a word in when we're talking.
Calvin, I have you on contact collection and creating a process to follow up with our generated leads.
Okay. Well, last year we had a 20% open rate on our follow-up email, but I wanted to outline a way to increase that by 30%.
Calvin is so smart. I always learn something when I'm on a team with him. He always does what he says he'll do. I like working with someone I know I can depend on.
Well, based on last year's data, we need to focus in on our ideal customer and cast a smaller net. That way we can execute a better follow-up. And if we do so, it should result in a 10 to 15% increase in open rates.
He'll get it done, too.
Moving on, Susan. I have you on booth theme again this year. I'd like to try something completely new to draw a larger crowd. What are your initial thoughts?
I thought the theme worked really well last year. I dread this. I have a hard time answering quickly when I'm put on the spot. I like to think things through it and make thoughtful decisions. And second, why fix something that isn't broken? We had a great process in place for last year's conference and we had a lot of success. Change for the sake of change is just going to make things hard on ourselves.
I'm going to pause that right there. One, I know it's struggling, and two, for the sake of time. So I want to address a couple of things with the S. S's need warning when there's going to be a change that takes place, like a lot of warning. So S's like routines and procedures in place. And if a change is going to be made and you do not warn them, it takes them a while to kind of work through that. So it's very important to note, let me stop share real quick. It's very important to note, especially in your industry, if you know that that something's going to come up and happen later or might be an obstacle later, it's better to reveal that early on with an S so that they can mentally prepare themselves for it. The other thing that it's important we talk about is that we need to make sure that the S gets to hear our opinion and how it has gone with us in the past. So testimonials for an S are super helpful. So success stories that have already happened in your life go really well with an S. All right, finally, the C. For the sake of time, I'm not going to do the video for the C, but I'm going to go through the details. And when we do the breakdown of the individuals, we'll go through those again and make sure that you guys get to see all of that. So let me share my screen one more time here. It's hard to fit all this into an hour, guys. It's a lot of
But we have S tomorrow. Tomorrow is S.
We do.
Yeah, for the thorough evaluation.
Yeah, we are going into detail of the S tomorrow, so don't you worry. All right, so let me go ahead. I don't know why it's struggling with me today. Let me try it one more time. Here we go. Thank you guys for your patience. And view. Okay, here we go. And then finally, the C. The C is the individual that seeks details. So they're the ones that do all the research and make sure they have the facts and the data to back up any decision that they make. Our S's and our C's take the longest to make decisions because the S's care about people's opinions and the C's care about facts to back everything up. So these are our ones that we want as our financial planners, okay? Our people who are going to take the time and make sure things are done correctly. So when working with someone who's buying a home or selling a home and they're a C, they're going to be the ones that ask a lot of questions. They come prepared to meetings with questions and you need to be prepared to answer them, right? What do they fear? Criticism, because if they've taken the time to do their best and do it right, and in their mind, do it perfectly, right? It's very hurtful for them to get constructive criticism because they know that they've done their best. Strengths. These are all great strengths. They're usually our most organized people. Everything's in order. Everything has a drawer and a label and everything that you need. But they are 100% data driven. So that is our C, our Calvin in the video. He has the books and the facts and the quotes to back everything that he says up. Well, they like to work alone. So they're not the most outgoing people. They don't mind sitting behind the computer by themselves. That's totally fine. They don't like to take big risks. So when making a major decision in their life, like the purchase of a home, it's going to take them a while. The process for buying or selling a home is going to take much, much longer for a C than any of the other personalities. And then finally, I want to note here that some people think that a C, it goes into over analysis paralysis, right? You might have heard that before. So some people can get very frustrated with the C because they're like, if we don't pull the trigger soon, if we don't move forward with this, we're never going to get it done, right? So we just need to make a decision. And if it's not the right one, we'll fix it along the way. Well, they want to wait until they have all the facts first. So there's a little bit of a struggle there. So with all this being said, I just want to end with this today. So is there a tendency that you saw in a video that you wish were easier for you to exhibit? So maybe, for example, you are more of a D personality and you wish sometimes you slowed down long enough to get other people's opinions before doing something, or you wish you slowed down long enough to get all the facts before doing something. So I just want you to think about that. You can feel free to drop it in the chat, but think about that and reflect on what is the strength that another personality style might have that you wish that you could work on and we could foster some growth in. So for the sake of time, I know I went a couple minutes over. It's so hard to get it in an hour, but that's why we do the second session and break it down in great detail. So we will have a half an hour tomorrow specifically on S. So I look forward to hopefully seeing many of you there, if not all of you, and I will turn it back over to Cindy.
I'm going to actually put both of these recordings in the, I'm going to turn this